Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess and this is Smut and Stockinette, your one-stop shop for all the romance wrecks you can find and handle and love. Today I am coming at you with the next era in our eras reading journey. Era number 2 is, of course, Fearless, and this one is all about conquering your fears and overcoming some of your obstacles in your reading. So just like all the other eras, we will have 3 prompts for this one, and I will go over all of those here and then talk about some of my recommendations for those and tell you what I'll be reading for this era, and then we will jump right into it. As always, you can find the links to all of the templates that I've made down below. If you want to participate, you can post them and tag me on Instagram or in your stories. I would love to see what you're choosing for these prompts. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the first prompt, which is a love story. And if you are a romance reader like me, this one should be fairly easy. But if you are not a primary romance reader, or if romance is not your jam, you can also use this to focus on a love story. Maybe it's a self-love story. It could be also a friendship story where the two characters are finding love in a friendship sense. It could also be like found family or something along those lines. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a romance novel in order to work for this prompt. And all of these prompts are designed to work for any genre. So if you're not a romance reader like I am, you can still absolutely play along. So for a love story, like I said, this should be pretty simple if you are a romance reader, but if you would like to dip your toes into some love stories, these are some of the ones that I've read the most recently that I would recommend. The first is The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks. This is a classic. I mean, is it a classic? I feel like it's a classic, even though it came out in the 90s. Anyway, if you haven't read The Notebook before, or if you've only watched the movie, I highly recommend this one. It is completely told from the male perspective, which I think is really unique for a romance novel. This one, you're following Noah and Allie, and you are kind of transported back in time to see their love story kind of form and grow, and it's absolutely beautiful. And you could probably pick any Nicholas Sparks book for this prompt and it would work. He is definitely a quintessential romance writer for sure. And a lot of his stories hit pretty hard. So if you're looking for something like that, I highly recommend Nicholas Sparks. Another one that I read recently was If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. This is a Cinderella retelling with a plus-size FMC, plus-size female man character. And it takes place on like a reality show, which I thought was so fun. It was definitely a really quick and lovely read. I really enjoyed the writing style and the characters were so fun and unique. And of course, a princess retelling. What better love story than that? And the third recommendation that I have for a love story is All Your First Without Me by L.M. Terry. This one is definitely not your traditional love story, but I wanted to throw it in here anyway because I think that the love story part of this was really well done. This one, you're following the female main character whose name I have forgotten, and she is coping with the loss of her husband, and through that, it's very P.S. I love you. He like left her letters and things like that, but I found the story to be really beautiful. There's also a lot of self-love or like self-growth in here for the female main character. She has to go through a lot to kind of cope with losing her husband, so I think that that kind of fits for the love story prompt as well. And one more suggestion that I do have for this prompt for a love story, you could also use a self-help book or self-improvement book to show yourself some extra love, so that is always an option as well. Okay, our second prompt is a book that you are afraid to read, and again, this one is very, very broad. You could pick something like a horror or a thriller or something outside of your normal genre that you don't typically read to fulfill this prompt. It could be also a highly anticipated read that you're afraid might let you down. That is always a great option for this one as well if you want to bump something up your TBR a tiny bit. This could also be a book that has a staggering number of pages and you are afraid that you will not get through it, without dropping it on your head while you're sleeping and knocking you unconscious, because it's literally the size of a brick. But whatever you decide, here are some recommendations that I have for a book that maybe you would be afraid to read. My first recommendation is Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. If you haven't seen the hype around this book, it is a love story between two serial killers. It definitely has some gore. It has literally 2 pages worth of trigger warnings in the beginning. So if this doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. But I absolutely loved this story. I highly recommend the audiobook if you can get it. It is duet narration, which means that the 2 characters actually talk back and forth throughout the book versus one chapter in one character's voice and the next chapter in a different character's voice. They actually commingle and talk back and forth, which I think made the banter and the romance so good. So I highly recommend Butcher and Blackbird. The next book that I actually feel low-key weird about recommending, because I didn't actually finish this book. I think I did. Maybe I didn't. I can't remember. Maybe I did. I did finish this book. Just kidding. I did finish it, but I don't think I wanted to towards the end. And that is Den of Vipers by K.A. Knight. I was definitely afraid to read this one. It is a why choose, which is historically not one of my favorite genres. It's also 600 pages. And there's a character in the group that is definitely terrifying. I was worried about the female main character's safety for most of the scenes with him. So if you haven't read Den of Vipers yet and you're not scared, definitely check it out. I think there's some trigger warnings in it maybe. So definitely check those, but I would not reread it. So check it out if you aren't scared. And the last recommendation that I have for a book you might be afraid to read is Unhinged by Vera Valentine. And this one is a sentient door romance. And yes, you heard that correctly. This is a romance between a woman and a door. Need I say more? If you're not afraid by that just a little bit, highly recommend it. It's a novella. You can find it on KU, but it was so fun. I actually really enjoyed it. Okay, and the last prompt that we have is a book with a musician character. I absolutely love musician characters in novels, but if you don't love like rock star romances or things like that, I do have a recommendation for that as well. But the first recommendation that I'm going to make is for Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. And this one is farther back in the Coho backlist, but it was definitely a great time. You're following a deaf musician and he starts falling for the girl who like lives across the lawn from his apartment. I don't know, whatever that middle thing is called. But I really enjoyed this one. I did not enjoy the rest of the series, but the first book was pretty good. And I do have a rockstar romance recommendation. I have Good Girl by Piper Lawson. I didn't love the Wicked series, but I recently started the Rebels series by Piper Lawson, and I'm really enjoying it. But they do recommend that you read the Wicked series first. So you would start with Good Girl, and then get through that series, and then go to the Rivals series. But I've had a lot of fun. They're pretty short, quick, easy reads, and I've been able to find them from my library. And lastly, if you are not into like a rock star romance or a musician romance, I recommend The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. This is a workaround for a musician character. You can always read a memoir by a musician. I really loved The Woman in Me by Britney Spears as somebody who grew up in that era for sure. I really appreciated getting an insight into kind of what happened to her, the life that she went through, and all of those things, kind of explaining, not that she needed to explain it, but kind of getting some more insight into the backstory of some of the things that she did throughout her life. Okay, now that we've got the recommendations out of the way, here are the books that I've chosen for my Fearless era. For my love story, I'm going to be reading Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. And this follows a florist and a wedding planner, and they kind of like had a thing before, so it's low-key second chance romance, but they like reconnect to work together on this wedding, and they fall for each other. The cover is absolutely gorgeous. I'm so excited. This is my first Julie Soto book, and I ended up, you can get the ebook on KU, but I also got the audio from my library so that I can tandem read that. But I am so excited. This one's so pretty. Next, for my Afraid to Read, I'm going to be reading It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. I read It Ends With Us back in 2022, and after seeing the movie recently for It Ends With Us, I have decided that I maybe will read It Starts With Us. I've been putting it off because I felt like it was really unnecessary for a sequel. It felt a little bit too fan servicey for me, but I'm going to give it a try and see how it goes and get Lily and Atlas's Happily Ever After. And lastly, for the musician main character, I'm going to be reading Muses and Melodies by Rebecca Yarros. This is book 3 in the Hush Note series. I highly recommend this whole series. I've absolutely loved the first 2 books. This is the third. It's a trilogy. It is a shared world trilogy, so the other 2 books are not by Rebecca Yarros. They're by Devney Perry and Sarita Bowen, starting with Lies and Lullabies. But I've really enjoyed this world that the 3 authors have created, and I'm excited to finish off this series with a Rebecca Yarros book for sure. Like I said at the beginning of the video, you can find the templates that I've been showing. I think they're over here. They might be over there. I don't know. I can never remember which way it mirrors. I think they're on this side. You can find these templates down in the link below, as well as the templates for the debut era if you missed that one. And I can't wait to see what you guys are reading, but let's go ahead and start the era. All right, I wanted to jump on with a super quick update because I started It Starts With Us, and my arm is not built for holding this. Hold on. Ugh. Okay, nope, I'm gonna have to hold it. I started It Starts With Us, and I am not hating it as much as I thought I would. I'm actually enjoying it. I got about 60% in, I believe, and my hold from the library ran out because I was waiting until after I saw the It Ends With Us movie before starting It Starts With Us, because I read the It Ends With Us book back in 2022, and I didn't want It Starts With Us to like influence my enjoyment of the movie. Anyway, so I'm waiting to get that back from the library, but I'm not hating it, so that's a win. I wanted to jump on super quick because I started Forget Me Not this morning, and I cried for like the first time in like the first 2 minutes. So I was like, lovely. We love to see it. So we are following Emma and Elliot. The first few chapters were from her POV. I just read his first chapter. And she is a wedding planner and he is like a florist. And we find out that, well, we knew. But in the story, they just found out, or she just found out, that she's going to have to work with him for this like high profile wedding that she's been asked to do. And the first chapter from his POV is like a flashback to 5 years before, when she was still working for like her boss. Now she has her own like wedding planning company, firm, like I don't know what they call those. But I'm really loving it so far. I think that there's good tension already. There's good, I don't want to say banter because it's like just her, but I really like her inner monologue and like her like panic because of him. But I haven't found out what happened between the two. So I'm excited for that. I love a good second chance. So that's our quick little update about Forget Me Not. Hello, I just got home from the gym, and I wanted to touch base with you really quick because I don't think I told you yet. I started Muses and Melodies by Rebecca Yarros for my musician prompt. I am already 40% in. I'm loving it. This is the third book in this Hush Note series. It's a shared world between Devney Perry, Sarita Bowen, and Rebecca Yarros. And this is the final book. This is book 3, and this is following Nixon, who is the guitarist, and he just got out of rehab. He's like the notorious party guy, and he just got out of rehab. And we have Zoe, who like is the assistant to the band's manager, and she's basically assigned to keep Nixon
sober. They have some shows coming up, and so she is like assigned to like keep him in line. And I'm loving it. It's so fun. Nixon is like going through his shit, and I'm really loving how Rebecca Yarros kind of let him go through that shit. I think it's really powerful. It's definitely like the struggle of not falling like into bed as like feeding that addiction instead of like his alcoholism. And so yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. Like I said, I'm 40% in. Sorry, I was just looking at our gutters. I'm 40% of the way in. And I might finish it tomorrow. I don't know if I'll finish it today. But so far, absolutely loving it. I highly recommend the series. It starts with Lies and Lullabies by Devney Perry. So, highly recommend. Check it out for sure. But I'm going to head in. I just got some steak tips for dinner. So, I'm going to go feed the hubby. We're probably going to watch an X-Men movie. We're like watching all the X-Men movies right now. So, like, that's the vibe. But I will check in with you if I get any more reading done tonight.
Welcome back. Let's recap my Fearless era. So I read 3 books. Duh. There's 3 prompts. I am kind of borderline like disappointed a little bit in this era, just for like a tiny smidgen, and that's only because of one book, and we'll talk about that one in a second. But first, for the first prompt, we had a love story, and for this I read Forget Me Not by Julie Soto, and I devoured this book. I ate it right up. It's about a wedding planner and a florist. It's like got second chance vibes, but they were just like hooking up before, so it wasn't really like relationship heavy in their like previous whatever. But I absolutely loved this book. I found them to be such great characters. I loved all the wedding dynamic. I think it was just really, really well done. So I was so excited to have finally crossed off this book from my TBR. And the cover is gorgeous, which we've already talked about, but we'll say it one more time. It's gorgeous. Next, we had a book that I was afraid to read, and for this I read It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover, and unfortunately I DNF'd this one around 74%. I was really enjoying it in the beginning. I enjoyed seeing Lily and Atlas kind of find their happily ever after and kind of reconnect after all the time had passed. Unfortunately for this one, it ruined it with how I felt Lily was treating Ryle, and I get it, like he hurt her and I understand that part, but I just felt like the co-parenting was handled really poorly in this. I felt like Lily was not being fair to him because of the past that they had, and that made me just kind of get the ick a little bit. The double standard for her and him, like her saying he couldn't have their daughter Emerson around like girlfriends, but then her taking her around Atlas without his like knowledge, not necessarily consent, but like just like a heads up. I just didn't like that part, and it really threw it off for me, so I ended up DNFing it. I was already kind of on the fence about reading it in the first place. I didn't feel like It Ends With Us needed a sequel. And again, I enjoyed the beginning part, so maybe if it was like an extended epilogue or something like that, or even a novella where it just talked about Lily and Atlas and didn't have like the Ryle drama stuff, maybe I would have enjoyed it a little better, but ultimately it was a no for me. And the final prompt was a book with a musician character, and I read Muses and Melodies by Rebecca Yarros for this one. I loved this one. I've loved this entire Hush Note series. It starts with Lies and Lullabies by Devney Perry. It is a shared world series, so all 3 books are written by a different author, but they're like following the same characters, or like the band is like the center point. Anyway, I really enjoyed this one. I felt that the 2 characters really went through a great transformation together. I felt like their chemistry was really evident, and I loved how they kind of played together throughout the whole thing. This one does have themes of addiction and things like that, because Nixon is going through it. So definitely keep that in mind if that is something that you don't enjoy. I feel like there's always like one rock star book that's addiction focused in some way, and that is definitely this book in this series. But I still absolutely loved it. It's one of those like classic rock star stories where like he's the bad boy, like rock star, and she has to like keep him out of trouble, right? Like we love to see it. We love a girl trying to fix him, you know? But I just thought it was really, really well done. They had great banter, and I absolutely loved this one. So that wraps up my Fearless era, which I really enjoyed this one. Unfortunately, that It Starts With Us was just a miss, but overall the era was very successful. Definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you're notified when the Speak Now era gets posted. I'm definitely really excited for that. I mean, I'm excited for all of them. I feel like it's just such a fun challenge and I'm obsessed with it. As always, I also have the templates linked below if you want to have your own Eris book tour. Definitely check those out and feel free to tag me on Instagram if you use them at all. But I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.